Well, we know the WNBA, they can't get past their political agendas. And it looks like neither can Stephanie White. Now, my issue with this is if you're a regular sports fan, you're now toxic because you don't want to hear about their political agendas and their causes. All right? We're not talking about they're getting behind we're trying to cure cancer. No. We're trying to keep it normalized.
Stephanie White just said the quiet part out loud. The Indiana Fever's head coach sat down with Sue Bird's podcast on December 5th, and when asked what she'd change about the WNBA, her answer wasn't about officiating or scheduling. It was about fans, specifically the toxicity she says new fans are bringing into the league. But here's what makes this fascinating. Those toxic fans she's talking about, they're the same people who just helped the WNBA secure a $2.2 billion media rights deal.
The WNBA is experiencing massive growth, period, over the past couple of years is undoubtedly a good thing. In fact, there's a case to be made. It could not have come at a better time for the league, given that the Players Association is currently in negotiations with the WNBA league office for the next CBA. It should be noted. Do you believe that Adam Silver could have parlayed the media rights deal into a $2.2 billion deal without all these toxic regular sports fans that showed up? Of course not.
Let's establish some context here. The WNBA experienced unprecedented growth in 2024. We're talking viewership numbers that shattered every previous record. When Caitlin Clark played, ratings spiked to levels the league had never even approached. And when she got injured, those numbers tanked immediately. The correlation wasn't subtle. It was direct, measurable, and undeniable. That growth translated directly into leverage during CBA negotiations, and ultimately into that massive media rights package. Without those new eyeballs, without those record-breaking audiences, the WNBA doesn't get anywhere close to $2.2 billion.
If women's basketball hadn't experienced this boom in popularity, which is largely owed to players like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and Paige Beckers entering the WNBA and thriving, it's hard to imagine the WNBA players would get the vastly increased salaries they're going to receive as part of a ratified CBA, or at least their salaries wouldn't increase to the same degree. Let me clean that up for you. Which is largely owed to players like Caitlin Clark. Period. Full stop. Full stop.
So here's the tension White is dancing around. The league desperately needs these new fans for financial survival. Player salaries are about to increase dramatically because of the new CBA that's being negotiated right now. Those salary increases only happen because of the media deal, and that media deal only happens because millions of new viewers showed up. But White wants those viewers to show up, watch quietly, and not push back on what she calls the league's commitment to being at the forefront of social change. That's the actual quote from her interview with Sue Bird.
I'd love the fact that the women in our league are always at the forefront of social change. The message. And sports in general is, but women in particular. She just come right out and said, I want our league to be all up in the agenda. I think we want to continue to expand the footprint to look to make sure the season's longer. It's tough with the calendar. It's tough with everything we have to compete against, but these women deserve an opportunity to have this as their only job, number one, and to be able to play a true season, to have an off season so their bodies can recover. And hopefully we won't see the same amount of injury.
Now compare that approach to what Adam Silver did with the NBA. After the 2020 season, when the league went all in on political messaging, painting slogans on courts and putting statements on jerseys, NBA ratings collapsed. Silver appeared on Good Morning America a couple years ago and made a clear statement: no more political logos on courts, no more overt activism during games. He didn't moralize about it. He recognized that fans tune in for basketball, not political education, and he adjusted accordingly. The NBA's ratings recovered. That's not a coincidence.
It's ridiculous. We want to be able to continue spreading our political agenda, is what she literally just come out and said. You know, there's been a case for me, and it's something Matrix and I have talked about, was should we go back to covering on this channel more things like we used to, where it's like, you know, every sport, basically overflow for the big channel, and maybe some of these WNBA topics, you know, and or maybe even not. And it's her message as to why I ain't going nowhere.
But White's comments reveal something deeper about how the WNBA views its audience. She frames disagreement as toxicity. She frames pushback as a problem that needs solving. And she explicitly states that she wants the league to continue being at the forefront of social messaging. Think about what that means practically. Regular sports fans show up expecting basketball analysis, competitive storylines, and athletic excellence. Instead, they're getting lectured about causes and agendas that have nothing to do with the game itself. And when they express frustration with that approach, they're labeled toxic.
This league is wild in how they are so unprofessional in how they handle their actual operations. It's crazy. It's bizarre how things are handled. I'm not shutting up about that. Not a chance. And now that gambling is in the background, I'm certainly not shutting up about it. It's a problem. Plain and simple.
Here's where this gets genuinely problematic from an operational standpoint. White is making personnel decisions for the Indiana Fever. She's deciding who gets playing time, who makes the roster, who gets traded. Those decisions directly impact game outcomes, and game outcomes now have massive gambling implications. Sports betting on WNBA games has exploded alongside the league's growth. People are putting real money on these games. So the question becomes, are coaching decisions being made purely on basketball merit, or are other factors influencing those choices?
The WNBA, look, they want the increased salary, they want the increased ratings, they want the increased attendance, but they want you to come in and enjoy their league and shut up. Nah, not a chance. There's a 0% chance of that in the forecast ever. Peace, I'm out.
That's not a hypothetical concern. The WNBA has multiple documented cases of players in romantic relationships across opposing teams. Players who know each other's strategies, tendencies, and game plans because they're literally in relationships with each other. In any other professional sports league with significant gambling revenue, that would trigger immediate investigations. The potential for conflicts of interest is massive. But the WNBA not only tolerates this, they celebrate it as part of their social messaging. White's comments suggest she views anyone raising these concerns as toxic rather than addressing the legitimate operational question. Let's break down exactly what White said in that Sue Bird interview, and why it matters for the league's future. She identified toxicity as something she'd like to change, but acknowledged it's not really a controllable factor, then immediately pivoted to praising how women in the league are always at the forefront of social change and messaging. That sequencing isn't accidental. She's directly connecting fan criticism with resistance to the league's activist positioning. But here's the fundamental problem with that framing. When the NBA went through its political messaging phase in 2020, fans didn't object because they opposed the specific causes. They objected because they tuned in for basketball and got activism instead. The product they wanted wasn't the product being delivered. That's not toxicity. That's basic consumer feedback. And Silver recognized that distinction, which is why he course-corrected. White seems unable or unwilling to make that distinction. In her framework, if you're showing up for basketball and expressing frustration about non-basketball messaging, you're part of the toxicity problem. That's a dangerous position for a league that desperately needs to retain the audience it just gained. Because those new fans have options. They can watch the NBA. They can watch college basketball. They can watch literally any other sport that doesn't treat their viewership as conditional on accepting a specific ideological framework. The timing of these comments is particularly revealing. The WNBA just finished its most successful season ever. Attendance records broken. Viewership records shattered. Media deals secured. This should be a moment of celebration and gratitude toward the fans who made that possible. Instead, White is on a major podcast talking about how she wishes she could change the toxicity those fans brought with them. That's not just tone deaf, it's strategically counterproductive. Think about what message that sends to casual fans who started watching because of Caitlin Clark. They tuned in, they got invested, they helped drive those record numbers. And now they're hearing from a head coach that their presence is creating toxicity that she wishes she could eliminate. Why would they stick around? Why would they continue investing time and money in a league that views them as a necessary evil, rather than valued customers? White also mentioned wanting to expand the season, give players more recovery time and reduce injuries. Those are legitimate operational goals, but notice how she framed it. These women deserve an opportunity to have this as their only job. That phrasing implies an entitlement to professional salaries regardless of revenue generation. But professional sports doesn't work that way. Salaries come from revenue. Revenue comes from and fans show up when the product is compelling and the league treats them with respect. The WNBA's revenue situation has improved dramatically, but it's still not self-sustaining. The league has operated at a loss for most of its existence, subsidized by the NBA. That $2.2 billion media deal changes the trajectory significantly, but only if the audience that generated that deal sticks around. And they won't stick around if the league's public face keeps telling them they're toxic for having opinions about how the league operates. Here's what makes White's position particularly frustrating for fans who genuinely want the WNBA to succeed. Nobody is arguing against women's basketball as a product. The athletic talent is obvious. The competitive games are entertaining. Caitlin Clark is must-watch television regardless of your politics. The product works when the focus stays on the product. But when coaches and players keep centering non-basketball narratives, they're actively undermining the thing that's actually driving growth. And the gambling issue can't be ignored anymore. When the league was a small niche product with minimal betting action, romantic relationships between players on different teams was quirky but ultimately inconsequential. Now, with major sportsbooks offering extensive WNBA betting options, with prop bets on individual player performances, with millions of dollars changing hands on game outcomes, those relationships represent genuine conflicts of interest that would trigger investigations in any other league. The standard response is that these are professional athletes who can separate personal and professional. Maybe that's true, but the appearance of impropriety matters when gambling is involved. And the WNBA's refusal to even acknowledge this as a potential issue suggests they're more concerned with maintaining their social messaging than ensuring the integrity of their product. That's not sustainable as the financial stakes increase. White's comments also reveal a fundamental misunderstanding about what made this season successful. She seems to believe the growth came from the league's messaging and activism, but the data tells a different story. Viewership spiked when Caitlin Clark played. It dropped when she did. Fans weren't tuning in for social commentary. They were tuning in to watch generational talent play basketball at an elite level. The league benefited from that interest, but they didn't create it through their messaging. So where does this leave the WNBA heading into next season? They've got more money than ever before. They've got more attention than ever before. They've got an opportunity to build something genuinely sustainable. But they also have coaches like Stephanie White publicly stating that they view a significant portion of their new audience as toxic, and they wish they could maintain their activist positioning without the pushback. Those two things are incompatible. You can't build a mainstream sports league while treating mainstream sports fans as the enemy. At some point, the WNBA has to decide whether they want to be a successful basketball league or an activist organization that happens to play basketball. Because trying to be both is alienating the exact audience they need to survive. The question isn't whether fans should accept everything the league does without criticism. The question is whether the league can accept that fans have legitimate concerns about how it operates without labeling all criticism as toxicity. Based on White's comments, the answer appears to be no. And that's a problem that $2.2 billion can't solve if the audience decides they dare spend their time and money elsewhere. So here's what you need to ask yourself. Is Stephanie White right that new fans are bringing toxicity? Or is the league's inability to handle basic criticism the actual problem? Because from where I'm sitting, calling your customers toxic for having opinions is a business strategy that's never worked in any industry. Let me know what you think in the comments.